Hi, I'm Dr. Barbara Milton. I'm new here to the Comcast family here in Union County, and partly that's because I recently moved to the Secaucus area from Jersey City. Many people were familiar with my work in Jersey City. I had a show on Comcast called Focus on Teens, where I attempted to integrate and educate people about issues affecting teenagers and to highlight teenagers who are positive, doing good things in the community. I am a career social worker. I've been doing social work since 1976. My very first job was working to provide responsible sex education and health education to teenagers on softball fields in Camden, New Jersey, when I myself was a teenager, in an attempt to stave off the crisis of unwanted pregnancies and escalating teenage pregnancy rates. And I guess I owe it to my mom and my grandmom for instilling in me a desire to be concerned about issues not just affecting my family and myself, but to always hold a view to issues that affect the wider community. And by that I meant my neighborhood and my city, my state, my nation, and the world. So for all these many years, I have made a commitment to getting informed about issues, participating in actions that help to create a better world. I mean, that's what social work is. Social work concerns itself with a plethora of issues that impact every aspect of our lives, from where we live, how we live, what we feel, what we do, how we cope, how we deal with the world that we live in. It has to do with the air we breathe. It has to do with the water we drink. It has to do with our sense of security as we live in our homes and as we live, certainly in my mother's generation and my grandmom's generation, with the threat of nuclear proliferation. And some of us are getting a taste of what that kind of insecurity feels like now with the current administration in Washington. Um, so social work concerns itself with peace and justice issues, world peace issues, climate issues, healthcare issues. It concerns itself with housing and roads and taxes and schools. It concerns itself with mental health and educational development and psychological development of human beings. It concerns itself with safety and concerns itself with violence, gun violence, the violence of opioid abuse, the violence of chronic pain and physical illness, the violence of racism and anti-Semitism and Islamophobia and uh, uh, attacks against the other if you're in the dominant European culture in America. Social work is a profession. It is a highly regulated profession. It requires various levels of education in order to be a social worker. There are different levels. There's a certified social worker, there's a licensed social worker, there's a licensed clinical social worker, which is the license that I hold. There are bachelors in social work, there are masters in social work, there are doctorates in social work and PhDs in social work. And I'm fortunate enough to have completed the PhD program at the City University of New York in 2009. So I have a doctorate in social welfare, which I acutely studied the impact of social welfare issues on the lives of Black folks in this country and figuring out ways to plan interventions to help people heal from the impact of historical racism and to heal from the impact of policies that adversely affect poor people and people on the margins. I mean, that's what social work concerns itself with. It is a profession that works to remediate and intervene in the lives of people on the margins, the homeless, the unwell, the elderly and aging, babies, children, seniors, uh, the sick, the infirmed, the incarcerated, um, the vulnerable. So that's what the profession's all about. And my hopes with transitioning from sort of a thorough look at adolescents and teenagers to really broaden my lens and to share information about issues that in fact affect all of us, not just teenagers, but from cradles to grave. The issues that is in the news, the issues that are being debated by policymakers at the local, state, and national levels, and even the international levels, like to really just put a spotlight on those issues and how those issues translate into the possibility of real change for people, uh, our neighbors, ourselves, and people that we all care about. Which it's hard sometimes to determine who those people are. I mean, we're in such a climate right now of divisiveness that sometimes it's hard to look at our neighbor and say, oh, is that a person I should have compassion and empathy for? Or should I just stay focused on making sure me and mine are okay? I mean, social work is not a profession of the I. It is a profession of the we. It is a profession of the community. And it is a profession that cultivates compassion and empathy and puts in place and implements real strategies to help our clients, who can be an individual, it could be a family, it could be a group, it could be a community, it could be a country, it could be our planet, but to do all we can to exact positive change on behalf of our clients. So my hopes for this new foray into Channel 96 and public access with Comcast, and while continuing my long relationship with them, is to provide information about critical issues. And I hope it will garner feedback from people so that I can get better and better and better each episode at introducing issues that people care about here in our community. And I hope to explore all sides of an issue. And I hope to inspire people to take an action step. And that step, hopefully, will help to create the kind of change we want to see on the issues. Now, I have a long history of doing social change work. I mean, like I said, I started out as a teenager on the softball field working with at-risk youth like myself to avoid the increase in teenage pregnancy. But then I moved on to working in an organization called New Jersey Citizen Action. And that was after I completed college at Seton Hill College in southwestern Pennsylvania. And working for Citizen Action and the Citizen Labor Energy Coalition and the Pennsylvania Public Interest Coalition and the Pennsylvania Alliance for Jobs and Energy, I got real exposure to economic issues, environmental issues, social issues that impinge on the lives of people. For example, when I first started working right out of college, I was canvassing. That means going door to door and talking to citizens. I mean, it's real democracy with a little d, like going and talking to our neighbors and talking to them about issues that are moving through the state legislature and the national Congress that would directly impact our quality of life. So I remember working on reauthorization of the Superfund site. Superfund was a piece of legislation that was designed to redress all of the toxic chemicals that were dumped in landfills, where all of a sudden cancer clusters started emerging in the world, kids being born with birth defects, cancers happening, etc. And they could be traced back to deposits of toxic waste and chemicals on which softball fields and golf courses and homes were built on many times. I mean, you know, it's another uh, topic to talk about whether or not this was willful and known on the part of the companies that did the dumping. But let's set that to the side for right now. The most important thing to understand, what I'm trying to convey, is citizen action. People talking to each other, getting educated about legislation meant to redress these issues, signing petitions, writing letters, raising funds for organizations to have a people's presence in the presence of elected officials. Because we know in the halls of Congress, in the halls of state legislatures, in the halls of school board meetings, in the halls of local, municipal, and county leadership meetings, there are lobbyists that represent big interests. So we were Citizen Action, which had operations in, I believe, 28 different states. What we attempted to do was to provide a people's presence, to inform the average citizen about these issues, and to have a seat at the table, and to try to exert influence so that we could be impactful as advocates to create change. And the result of that work with Citizen Action and the Clean Water Action Project and a lot of other good environmental organizations, the environmental federations, the Audubon societies, and others, we were able to get Superfund legislation passed. And that translated into real help for people. It got sites cleaned up. It put a cap on the ability of dangerous chemicals to leach into water supplies. It saved people's lives. So we did that with environmental issues. We did it with tax issues. We did it with landlord-tenant matters. We did it with racism and apartheid in the early mid-1980s. We educated the citizens of this state of New Jersey, and we became able to sit at the table and to influence policymakers to make decisions that were good for their constituents. Because most times people aren't represented. And that's just a fact of the matter. I mean, I don't know about you. I mean, how easy is it for you to get to a city council meeting here in Secaucus? How easy is it for you to go to a freeholders meeting, or to go meet down in Trenton to meet with your assembly people in your district, or your state senators, or the governor, you know, or your U.S. Congress people? I mean, we're all working. We're all trying to have the best lives we can. Most of us are working 2 and 3 jobs. Sometimes our eyes are not on these critical issues. Just ordinary people. And ordinary people are impacted by the decisions these policymakers make. So when I first started out, I cut my teeth in the social work profession, aligning myself with community organizing and coalitions, so that on behalf of the poor and the vulnerable and folks that were the, the sort of victims of poor policy making at the local, state, and national level. And then I moved from there to get involved in electoral work, because there's a social dimension and laws, but there's a political dimension to our lives as well. And this is very clear. I mean, policymakers make laws that impact us. We all know this. So who's in office really matters. Now, I don't proselytize. I don't tell people who to vote for. I believe that's a personal matter, who you go into the polling booths and pull the levers for. I will tell people in my Kiss and Kin network who I vote with and for, but I try to stay focused on the issues. if a candidate embraces my issues, and I'm not a single issue person, but looking at the totality of the things I care about, what candidate speaks to that, and I exercise my right as an American citizen to vote. And this is a right that for African Americans anyway, and I dare say for all of us, is a critical right for us to exercise. I mean, in my heritage, the right to vote came in the late 1960s, and when Africans have been citizens in this country since 1619. In fact, there's a 400-year anniversary celebration going on right now about when the first slaves were introduced into continental United States of America. So for 400 years, for, minus 50 years, so let's say 350 years, black people weren't even considered citizens. They weren't enfranchised. I mean, women had gotten to vote just a little while earlier, so women weren't even enfranchised, right? So this is the history of this country. I mean, if you owned land, if you were in the agribusiness, if you were in the gentry class, you uh, you owned property, you owned land, you were part of the business sector. If you were white, you were enfranchised. And so here we are now in the year 2019, and I'm saying is absolutely critical for us to continue to struggle around full enfranchisement of all people in the United States of America. Because we all are citizens and we're all given this right under the Constitution. And efforts to suppress voting and to minimize voting and to redistrict and gerrymander so that blocks of groups of people, and sadly, gerrymandering is sort of code for sort of a racializing of the voting blocks that exist in given election districts. But so enfranchisement is critical. So voting is important, and I'm so grateful I had the experience of learning the ins and outs of our election process and understanding our civic duty to participate in elections and to trace and track the flow of a concept of an idea and to see it move through and be drafted into a piece of legislation and to understand the various committees that bills go through to eventually become voted bills in lower chambers and upper chambers of houses, and to see mayors and to see presidents and governors sign legislation into law. But that process is critical, and I spent a lot of years working in the electoral arena. And then I have to say I sort of burnt out. So I decided to sort of pivot and went to doing what's called in the social work field micro level social work, which meant I then decided to get out of sort of macro level, which is community issues and community strategies for social change, and to look at individual work with individual clients. And I worked in homeless shelters for women and children, which was a fascinating experience from the point of view of managing a facility in Somerset County, from the standpoint of understanding better the struggles of women on aid to families with dependent children, with subsidies from the government and from welfare, and understanding the housing and homelessness crisis better, and to understanding the skills that it takes to work one-on-one with people who have been sort of off the radar, people that we walk past when we are, walking through our cities, the homeless, the houseless. But these were people in a family shelter, and they received lots of services and supports, and the goal was to liberate them from dependence on government and to teach them the skills to be independent and to inspire and motivate them to seek education and training so they can be more financially independent and to become better parents so that we could break the cycle of poverty and break the cycle of abuse that has drives so many people into homelessness. I think at that time also, we started to see the veterans population and the single men. This was in the late 1980s and early 90s. The concept of single room SROs and the mental health crisis with the homeless population and vets coming back, and the understanding now of PTSD and trauma from the various wars. So I really got an appreciation of that population and the issues they faced. And then I transitioned from that to working with um, Rutgers Cooperative Extension in Bergen County. And this had to do with the 4-H program, which is a very fascinating program. Cooperative Extension is fascinated. It had sort of three components. It had a agricultural component, a family and nutrition component, and it had the 4-H program. And I had the good fortune of working to recruit volunteers who wanted to work with young people all around Bergen County. And I learned so much about volunteer management and very specific issues that was science driven from the whole cooperative USDA cooperative education network. And, um, and that allowed me to get more skills in understanding another part of federal government, which is the USDA and this whole land grant management process and system that's in play. And that was fascinating. And I did that for a lot of years, working on my master's degree at the same time while I worked for the institution for Rutgers. And then I said, you know what? I want to keep developing my skills. And I decided then that I wanted to be a psychotherapist. And I wanted, which is sort of the comparable title for social workers in psychotherapy as a clinical social worker. We essentially function the same way as a psychology trained psychotherapist, but this is a social work clinically trained clinician. And I did that, started that work, and worked for the old Jersey City Medical Center, working with children and families. And then I wound my way to Catholic Charities, and I was working as a clinical supervisor, working for the Urban League in Hudson County, working for the Visiting Homemakers Association, working for the YWCA of Bergen County. And I also started teaching at this time and training new social workers. Started teaching at various universities, Rutgers, um, uh, uh, Touro College, Montclair State University, to name a few. And training and mentoring the next generation of professional clinical social workers, and also professional social workers who did not want to do clinical work on the micro level, but wanted to do macro level of work, working as administrators and policy wonks as well. And that, and then I became a trainer as well, like doing workshops at the National Association of Social Workers in the New Jersey chapter, of which I've been a member for many, many, many years. And I guess my hopes for this program is to familiarize yourself, to familiarize you with the National Association of Social Workers, and kind of the many, many issues that they take on for the profession. So you'll hear me reference them quite often as we move through our relationship together, because this is just the first episode, and it's really an introduction to what it is I hope to do. Right? So, Dr. Milton's social work program, like I really want to help you to understand both the profession and the issues that social workers concern themselves with. So you'll hear me mention social work organizations from all over the country, including Puerto Rico and our U.S. territories where there are chapters, so that you can just be informed about the things that social workers are doing all around the country and even around the world. So I will certainly want to share all that with you as well. So that's where I am now. I'm writing a book right now about cultural resilience. so that we can help young people develop the strategies, behaviors, attitudes they need to cope with adversity, and to cope with living in a world that targets unfairly people in brown skin. I mean, that's my considered opinion. You may feel differently, but at any rate, there's no denying that black and brown children driving their cars to go to the mall, oftentimes get stopped, have to engage with police officers. And we need to teach these young people how to have successful encounters with authority figures. I mean, to me, that's one of the greatest failures right now. And I think if I do nothing else in my professional career through the books I'm going to write and ongoing training, is to really work with these adolescents and to train them on how to have more positive encounters with authority, including their parents and their teachers, and also people who represent authority in our communities. So that's the aim of the program. Um, and I hope you'll enjoy it. I hope you will derive some benefit from it, the new information. I hope you'll have a couple of, oh, haha moments where you say, oh, I didn't know that was happening in my neighborhood or in our state. And oh, and I want to do something about it. Ultimately, I want to inspire you to do something about issues that impact you. Taxes, environment, safety zones in our community, quality of life issues, the cost of living issues, Social Security, healthcare, education. Like I said, everything that impacts us fall under the rubric of social welfare. And, our Constitution says that our government is to provide for the common good and the social welfare of its citizens. And social workers is the professional organization. I mean, I think there are others too, but certainly in my present profession, we are compelled to hold our government accountable to that grand promise in the Constitution. All lives matter, and all issues that we will be concerning ourselves with through this program will impact on the quality of our lives. And for a very long time, I've been blessed to be able to effect positive change in the lives of people. Nothing makes me feel better than seeing young people excelling, reaching their dreams, parents and children relating well with one another, diminishing family discord, seeing neighborhoods interacting together positively across diverse ethnicities, uh, to see the elderly loved and cared for, to see people with pre-existing health conditions, to fight to make sure that happened in this country so that people can continue to have life-saving care that they need. That was a huge battle that we had a victory around that sadly is under assault right now. And lastly, I want to say it's not enough to just hear information to get educated. I hope when you get the information, it will kind of agitate you a little bit. Like it'll swirl around inside of you. And you'll say, I got to do something about this. I have to do something about the fact that some companies coming into our town and they are not going to hire local people to do the job. Or that they're hiring people that they're undercutting salaries, or they're not offering union jobs. You know, we have to take action. So I hope to provide you opportunities to do that as well, to take an action step. Because social work isn't just theory, it isn't just history, it isn't just sociology or psychology, it isn't just humanities. What it is behaviors and action. And when we take those actions, we can create positive change in our homes, in ourselves, in our homes, in our families, in our communities, in our cities, in our states, in our nation, and in our world. And thank you so much for tuning in, and I look forward to you tuning in to the next episode of Dr. Milton's social work program. Stay woke.